opportunities in the space. Today, I have two leaders from Marijuana Matters, an advocacy group based out of DC originally, that is doing great work in the space, and I've had great conversations with, and I'm really excited to have you ladies share your perspective on cannabis. So I have Dianna and Courtney with me. I would love to start with Courtney and then go over to Dianna. I would love to just get a background of you guys' professional career before you jumped into cannabis, before we get into the conversation.
Thank you so much for having us. It's truly, I'm so excited to be here. Have been following your work and seen a bunch of your interviews, and are grateful that we have the opportunity to speak with you today. My name is Courtney Davis, and my background is in policy and advocacy work. I was working, I went to Clark Atlanta University, got a political science degree, and I was working on campaigns. I worked on Kasim Reed's first mayoral campaign and thought that that was kind of the trajectory that I would go in, and ended up not getting a job in the administration as quickly as I thought I would. So my parents were like, you should come here, get a chance to live for free. This was 2009, so the economy wasn't great. So I moved. My parents were living in Denver at the time. I moved there and ended up getting a job with Senator Michael Bennet, who's a US Senator there, and had an opportunity to work in his personal office there, focus on a lot of casework, and I really wanted to get back into the policy side of things. So I transferred to our DC office, and I worked on the Hill for about 7 or 8 years, working on policies related to agriculture and veterans issues. And after working on the Hill for a while, you either get really deep into an issue that you like, or you kind of decide you want to go the consulting route. And towards the end, I was really struggling with what I wanted to focus on, what my passions were. And with the agriculture portfolio, I had an opportunity to work on some hemp policies, and obviously working for a Colorado member. Cannabis was something that was talked about heavily at the state level, but not federally. And I really wanted to dive a little bit deeper. I found that I was, really passionate about that. I had skills from, advocacy, research, coalition building, but not specific to cannabis. So I spent about a year networking and learning more from folks that were in the DC area. And I ended up meeting Khadijah, who I believe at the time, who was the founder of our organization, Marijuana Matters, and who I believe at the time was finishing up at Harvard, but she had already started Marijuana Matters, her brainchild and her baby. And she says, Courtney, we need women, we need people of color to jump into this industry. I don't have any money for you right now, but we need folks like you. And so I said, okay, I was used to being in a very structured environment at work. And so, we had this conversation, and I said, oh yeah, I think that, she wants to hire me eventually, but no contract, she didn't ask for a resume, she didn't ask for a cover letter. And eventually, about 6 months later, we were able to work something out. And so I, will say to folks that are thinking about getting into the industry, if it's something that you are curious or even partially curious about, you could spend your own time learning a little bit more about cannabis. That's something that we like to do to help folks at Marijuana Matters, is to learn how they can plug their skills into the industry.
Okay, we'll get to that part. I just wanted to do pre-cannabis. So Dianna, I would love to hear your background before, because I actually do have some more questions for you, Courtney, because I've never really heard the Black woman's perspective navigating like a political or public policy career. So I definitely want to touch back on that. But I'd love to get Dianna's background first before we do that.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for this opportunity. I'm really excited to share my background because I think it's an example of how you can get into the cannabis space without ever touching the plant, or even without living in a state where it's legal. So I was a high school English teacher for 4 years, and then I had my son, and I really wanted to stay at home with him, but I also needed to generate an income. I have an English degree. I'm a writer. I went to the University of Florida and got my degrees there. So I heard about freelance writing, and I was like, let me look into this. And I took on a whole bunch of small jobs, got paid pennies for them. And then I pitched to a cannabis business and they paid the best. And truly, it was an economic decision my husband and I made. We were like, this client is offering the most money. It was tough for us. We had to really think about it because I recognize that there is a lot of stigma attached to cannabis. And at the time I was a teacher and I was afraid that if my name was in the byline that people would feel some type of way or make assumptions about me. But we prayed about it and we decided that this was the path for our family. So I started writing about cannabis in 2016. In that time, I learned a lot about the relationship between the war on drugs and systemic racism. I did not enter this space with that knowledge. I knew that Black people were disproportionately targeted because we always are, but I didn't see how closely related cannabis legislation was to that. And so I started to feel this increased sense of outrage as I'm writing for my client. Occasionally, I'd write some articles about it, but that was definitely not the focus of that client's business. And then in October 2019, I get a call from this Khadijah Tribble. And I had just decided that I was not going to take on any more clients. And she starts talking about marijuana matters. And she starts saying things like, I believe that the regulated cannabis industry can be a pathway for racial justice and social equity. And I was like, man, this sounds amazing. She was so intentional in talking to me about her mission that I had to change my mind. I was like, I want to work with you because her passion for this and also the mission of Marijuana Matters is so important and also so misunderstood. A lot of people, when my husband found out about it, he was like, what does social justice have to do with cannabis? I don't understand. And as I started talking to him more about it, it flipped and he was like, this is really ironic that the very people on whose backs this culture of cannabis was developed are excluded from the industry. So that's how I got into Marijuana Matters. That's what my background is. And I'm really thankful to be a part of this mission.
We'll get deep into like the Marijuana Matters mission and what you guys are working on right now. But before we jump into that, starting with Dianna, I'd love to get just an overview on how you ladies feel people should be paying attention to cannabis right now. We just had the national election. We just had, I think, New Jersey, Mississippi, and a few other states legalized either recreationally or medically. So what should the Black entrepreneur be paying attention to heading into 2021 around cannabis and how they can insert themselves through the many interests that we do have into the space?
So my thoughts on how the Black entrepreneur should be paying attention to the cannabis industry, I think there are two ways you can look at it. I think on the one hand, as an entrepreneur, you have to just recognize that this is an opportunity. There's an opportunity here. And there are many ways that you can enter that opportunity the way there are for any industry. So if you're a writer like me, you can use that skill set to enter the industry. If you are into marketing, if you're a photographer, if you like helping brands develop their labels, etc., there are lots of ways for you to enter that have nothing to do with getting a license. So I think that is a really profitable and smart way to think about entering the industry if you're starting from a situation where you don't have a lot of capital already. Because that's another thing to think about is if you want to get a license, if you want to open a dispensary, if you want to become a cultivator, you're going to need to raise capital. So that's something to be thinking about. That's expensive, but it's not the only way to enter. As you can see, I don't need a license to be a freelance writer covering the cannabis space. The other thing I think Black entrepreneurs need to think about and advocate for is social equity, that should be a part of all cannabis legislation. It's about the community. If you're legalizing cannabis and there is no language in the law, and I'm sure Courtney can speak much better to this, there's no language in the law discussing how you're going to repair the harms created by the criminalization of cannabis, then we're going to continue to see the racial disparities that we're seeing. The war on drugs is just a really strong and effective arm of structural racism. And so unless you address that and pull it out from the root, it's just going to keep the problems associated with it will just continue to occur.
Right. And Courtney, that's the perfect segue to you because I've been paying attention closely to the New Jersey market, right? And New Jersey is going to be one of the biggest markets thus far that's legalized, but of the 12 operators who are there medically right now, none of them have made a mention of the fact that there is no social equity legislation in the bill. None of these companies thus far have mentioned how they're going to help small businesses, let alone Black or brown people, just small, non-multi-million dollar operations come in. So what do we as citizens or activists or business people, what do we do to try to hold these companies accountable as legislation starts to come through that doesn't support what we need in the bill?
Policy happens all the time without the input of those that have the center lived experiences. And so what you see happening is folks getting really excited about legalization. From the community standpoint, of course, people that are consumers want to be able to go into a dispensary, buy products that have been tested and verified and that are safe, and not, be afraid of penalties for engaging in something that folks have been using for, centuries. And then, from the industry perspective, folks want to make money, and a lot of states and localities are seeing that this is a way for them to create revenue, especially in COVID-19. Everyone is talking about tax revenues from legal sales from cannabis. And so everyone's super excited about that. But, the racial justice piece has to be included in these conversations. And what we saw happening in states like Colorado and Washington and other places where it was on the ballot or it happened through state legislature, the social equity was not a focus of those conversations. And so in New Jersey, what we have is an opportunity to force these issues and to educate legislators and also community on how they can advocate for these policies. What we believe is that we want to start building the groundwork for that movement early on, before legalization happens. The conversation needs to happen before it's on the ballot, before states are rushing in these special sessions to get things done and to find money and find ways to fill their budget shortfalls. And so that's one of the things that we want to do at Marijuana Matters, is help educate folks on how to advocate what we believe equitable policies look like. And policies are not perfect. We have to go in and change them. There has to be oversight, which is a way, there's reporting requirements, which is a way for folks to go back and look at the data and say, is this accomplishing the goals that we wanted to see? Are we truly repairing what's been dismantled from the war on drugs through these policies? And social equity is one of the ways that we talk about that, but social equity hasn't truly garnered the type of results that folks have expected, but we're still working on those policies nonetheless.
Okay, let me follow up with this, because I think that a lot of us don't pay attention, right? So what's worst case scenario? Let's say groups like Marijuana Matters don't exist, and let's say people just allow legislation to be created and pushed forward, and we don't voice our displeasure with it. What do you think? Where do you think the cannabis industry ends up if we don't advocate effectively? What happens?
I think that if we don't advocate effectively, that what we'll have is just an industry that's just like any other retail industry, where that's being dominated by folks that have the most capital, which are normally white men. We'll see the Coca-Colas. I mean, we're already seeing that, but we'll see the Coca-Colas of the world get involved. They'll purchase up all of the smaller companies. They'll be able to hire the botanist, and African Americans will probably still be incarcerated because legalization does not come with expungement. It does not come with automatically releasing individuals that are incarcerated right now. And so I think that this will be a missed opportunity for communities that have been criminalized, that have been disadvantaged by the criminalization of marijuana, to find some sort of way to revitalize their communities through the economic empowerment that can come with the money from the sales of cannabis. And also, you know, as Dianna mentioned, not just everyone that wants to participate in the industry, but, you know, folks that could be hired in the community to do other things. You know, we could have a reinvestment fund to create libraries that can create jobs. Just a number of, we have to start to think a lot bigger than just cannabis, the plant. But if we don't get involved, it's going to be over for us pretty quickly. We won't really have an opportunity to get into the industry once it's already been established. It'll be like alcohol or anything, any other industry.
Right. I agree 100%. And the reason I asked that is because now I want to get into, you know, Marijuana Matters, what you guys' mission is, and kind of what are some of the projects that you're working on. I'd love to start with Dianna.
Well, the team at Marijuana Matters is just made up of people who are passionate about bringing social equity to the forefront of the conversation around cannabis legalization. And I hope that you get a chance to interview the other members on the team because they really bring so much to the table and have incredible insight. I am the primary writer for the Greenlight blog. That is the blog that Marijuana Matters produces, and that's part of the education pillar. So if you check out that blog, you will find a lot of information that's explaining the relationship between the war on drugs and the social disparities we see when it comes to race, what social equity even means. Something I think these are topics, the more you talk about them, these topics begin to sound really familiar, and it's easy to get into an echo chamber where we're all agreeing with each other. But there's this whole community of people who actually care about the same things we care about. They just aren't part of those conversations because of certain stigmas that are in the way. So I think there's a huge group of people right now who would be all about social equity in the cannabis space, but who aren't even talking about it because they just think cannabis, bad, drugs, unhealthy behaviors. And there's a lot to say about the medicinal uses of cannabis and, its history. So the blog really serves the purpose of educating all types of stakeholders, whether it's someone who owns or is a part of the executive board of a corporation, to an advocacy group, to a member of the community, just somebody who just wants to understand the relationship between criminalizing cannabis and mass incarceration of Black people. So that's what the blog is all about. Right now, we're working on a community empowerment series. So what can the community do with the power that we have? Yes, there are laws that are in the way of social equity. Capital is a problem. So what can we do as a community with the power that we have right now? And we have a lot of power. I mean, clearly we have power because cannabis is being legalized across the country. So that means that, the cannabis community has political capital that we can use. We're going to be talking about ways that advocacy groups can work together because we're stronger together. There's this belief often that there's a scarcity of resources, and so we have to compete. We can't collaborate. We can't support each other. We can't, if they're talking about that, then I got to talk about this. And it doesn't have to be that way. Racism is a humongous problem, and it's also really specific and to specific communities. And the more of us there are out there, the more solutions there are. So yeah, that's what's going on with the Greenlight blog.
Okay, Courtney, is there any other projects? I know you guys have a lot of social media programs that you're rolling out. I think you guys just started the Weed Crush Wednesday series back up. What are other ways that you guys are working, and how could our viewers support the Marijuana Matters movement?
Yeah, we are really excited to be rolling out a lot of programming and services in 2021. So we want to make sure that the viewers go to our website, marijuanamatters.org, to sign up to learn more about ways that you can support our organization. Obviously, we're a nonprofit, and so financial donations are appreciated and necessary. But we do have a social media, a comms team, and we do have a Weed Crush Wednesday blog that airs on Instagram. We've had some great speakers that we interviewed. Hope Wiseman, the founder of the dispensary Marion, Maine in Maryland, Leo Bridgewater from New Jersey. And so we have a lot of, that's part of our education pillar along with the writings from the Greenlight blog. And, social media is fun. And so it's a way for folks to engage for a couple minutes on a Wednesday evening, to just learn more about what folks that are already in the industry are doing, how they got there. Basically, a lot of the work that I do is building coalitions. We're going to be rolling out some programming based on a social equity toolkit that Khadijah and I have been working on, that has a lot of information on and recommendations on what communities can do to engage in these issues, what we believe industry should be doing, how they should operate and move with intention in this space, have folks on their advisory board from center lived experiences, and et cetera. And then we also have recommendations for public institutions, government officials, and policy, and how they should be looking at this from a social equity lens always, to kind of set the tone for these policies. Because there are a lot of laws that have to be changed. I mean, yes, we're creating new laws for the legal industry, but we've got to get rid of some of these old laws that have impact on the collateral consequences that some of these individuals that would like to participate in the industry but can't because of the criminalization of marijuana. So we have a lot of work to do from all of those three fronts. It's really a 360-degree approach to creating what we consider to be equitable policies, and really wanted to empowering all three of those groups to work together and collaboratively, because we need allies. We need consumers to be socially conscious when they're purchasing goods. We need advocates, we need buy-in from doctors and folks in the research field. So this is some of the work that we're planning on doing in 2021, trying to bring all those groups together, put on panels, and really give folks information that they've been asking for, in order to create an industry that does no harm.
I also have a question for like our viewers who are in states like New Jersey that just legalized, or Mississippi medically, or in markets that are close to it. Let's say like Virginia, the Governor Norman just stated that he wants to legalize in 2021. Governor Cuomo said he wanted to legalize in 2021 in New York State. What advice do you have for the entrepreneur in these states that are right at the cusp of legalization? What should they start doing now to give themselves a better opportunity to succeed in the space once it comes to their state?
I think folks they've got to get prepared. I mean, it's a business. You have to work on your business plan. You have to come to the table with your idea. You've got to know folks, if you're a business. And, when I worked on the Hill, we met with businesses all the time that would come up and say, hey, I don't need anything right now. I just want to introduce myself. I want you to be familiar with my company. Here's what I'm trying to do. Here's how many people I employ. Just so that you can continue to build those relationships. That's going to be really important. The cannabis industry is tight-knit, especially for those of us, of people of color. You're gonna, the same folks that are in California are trying to help write the laws in New Jersey and vice versa. So you really do need to do your due diligence and networking. It's also a long game. You're gonna have to be willing to possibly, New Jersey just legalized on the ballot, but they have to write the bill. They need time to create the policy, the licensing structure. I mean, we could be looking at another year, 6 months. We have no idea. I mean, in Illinois, everyone was saying that they have the best social equity program, but they haven't awarded any licenses to social equity recipients yet. And so you really do have to be willing to just kind of wait this out. Some people are bootstrapping it with their own finances, which is really challenging. But we're going to need to be patient and continue to just network, try to come up with good ideas. I mean, it's going to happen eventually, but it is really a long game to be in this industry.
Incredible advice, and the only thing that I would add is to look at your community, look at the people around you, and see how you can help them and how you can benefit from the value they have to offer. So I think it can be tempting to feel like, man, I got to figure this out on my own. Man, I got to start from zero on my own. But there's probably somebody near you who is maybe a few steps ahead. How can you help them? It can be a mutually beneficial arrangement, but I think that's kind of like an apprenticeship sort of situation. You can create that on your own, and you can then learn more and more about the industry. So when you do have the resources you need to begin your own business, you're not starting from scratch, and you also have this community now that is behind you.
I do want to ask you this. Because of COVID and the pandemic, we aren't really able to like network and meet people face to face and go to, conferences or mixers and stuff like that. So what have you ladies been doing to kind of continue to build your resource network, your contact list in spite of COVID? What advice would you give to the entrepreneur coming into cannabis in the middle of a pandemic?
The internet is going to be your friend. I met Khadijah on LinkedIn, and this was before the pandemic. So I think that you just have to be willing to reach out to people, send them emails, DM them, look at, I love LinkedIn. I use that a lot. I look at the first, second, and third connections. I send those messages. If people don't respond, they don't respond. But you really have to be intentional. You've got to be, a little bit aggressive, motivated. I started with Marijuana Matters in March. And so I probably had about 2 weeks of like fun stuff that I thought I was going to do, all these conferences, South by Southwest. And then the lockdown happened. And everyone that I've met has been through email, over Zoom. Don't be afraid to reach out to someone and say, hey, I know that I see you follow this person. Do you know them? Can you make the introduction? A lot of things are happening online, and you just kind of have to get on there, follow the right people, Google stuff. I mean, it's essentially research at this point. And so that's the advice that I have for folks. It's just really take that leap of faith. I know sometimes you like type the email up and then you're like, okay, are they going to think I'm stupid or are they going to not? If they don't respond, they don't respond. And that's their bad, because in 6 months when they see you on a panel, they see you, launching your product, they're going to be like, oh, damn, that person did reach out to me, and let me hit them up now.
I always tell people, our generation, we have not utilized LinkedIn how we should, right? We're really enamored with Instagram and Facebook and Twitter because they're marketed to us the most effectively. But I always tell people, you're on LinkedIn to do business. Nobody's on there to make a friend. Nobody's on there to try to find a date. You're on there to either buy a product, sell a product, get a job, or hire someone, right? So, and you're able to get in contact with people on LinkedIn that you're not going to be able to get in contact with anywhere else. The CEO or the managing director of a company, because like you said, they're one message away, and they may have 80 DMs on Instagram and 2 messages on LinkedIn. So I always tell people, that's kind of your business card in 2020. You can put all your qualifications, all your experience, and it's a lot easier for people to take you seriously from the sense of business. But in closing, I would love for you ladies to tell us where we can follow Marijuana Matters and yourselves on social media for anyone who may have questions, and how they can just contact you following this interview.
Well, our Instagram page is Marijuana Matters DC. Our website at marijuanamatters.org. We have a lot of information there for folks. My name is Courtney Davis. You could find me on Instagram at Courtney_Rose. And yeah, I'm excited to, continue the conversation and get to meet some of you guys. If you reach out to us on our website, our email is there, it'll more than likely be me or someone else responding. So we're happy to get a chance to know some new folks.
You can find the Marijuana Matters Greenlight blog on the website. There's a link that says Greenlight blog, or you can just find it on Medium. Marijuana Matters is the name. And Andrew, I'm going to take your advice and just plug my LinkedIn, just Dianna Benjamin. Honestly, I'm terrible at social media, really bad, but I do like that LinkedIn is just kind of cut and dry. It's just all business. So if you want to reach out to me, you can find me there. Check out the Marijuana Matters website. There's so much useful information there.
Oh yeah, and Khadijah texted me and told me to make sure I asked you about the Equity First survey. So if you could give us kind of an explanation of what that is also on the site.
Oh, okay. I'll take this one. The Equity First survey is something that we are using to just learn more about the folks that are finding our page or have found our website. And we want to know what you guys are interested in learning, where you are in this space. Um, are you an entrepreneur? Are you interested in, getting into the CBD side of things? Are you a teacher who is looking for ways to, educate their students or something for your community on the side? And so the survey is just information that we're going to use to kind of help create our programming from, because a lot of times, we just want to know what folks are interested in. We don't want to be putting panels on. No one's asking about edibles and we're sitting here talking about dosing. We want to know what type of content folks are looking for, especially for our entrepreneurship work. We want to know how we can make these connections for you by using the networks that we have. And so that's a little bit about the survey, but that's also available on our website.
Okay, perfect. I appreciate you, ladies. I love every time I have a conversation, and we don't have enough women of color in the space, especially in the advocacy arena. So I'm definitely looking forward to what you ladies are doing in 2021, and I look forward to having you back on soon.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrew.